How's it going, guys? John here. This is the Basic Expert, and today we're going to continue our dive into basic fantasy role-playing game. We've been doing previously to this 6 videos where I've kind of taken a deep dive trying to explain the rules as I read them and interpret them, and how I'm using them, as well as filling in the gaps with a few different things about how I'm supplementing with other sources such as the Rules Cyclopedia and Lion and Dragon. I haven't touched on the Rules Cyclopedia and Lion and Dragon in a while, and I think what I'm going to end up doing is that each one will be its own devoted video or something along those lines, where we're going to talk as an addendum, like an appendices sort of video of like, these are the little things that I'm adding from these other sources to supplement further my basic fantasy game. I kind of went over it in character creation. A lot of it is in character creation, such as with skills and weapon mastery and stuff like that, but I didn't really explain weapon mastery very well, so I might do a video talking about that. I also want to do a video just dedicated to the Rules Cyclopedia in general. I think it's one of the best iterations of the game that's ever been released, condensed into one book where you get monsters, how to play, and the Mystara setting all in one book. Perfect desert island book, and I kind of want to do a video dedicated just to that. So I'm kind of torn. Tell me what you think, though, in the comments below. If you would like to see sort of an addendum sort of video, an appendices sort of video, where I go over some of these other resources that I'm using to supplement basic fantasy. For this video, though, we're talking about monsters, and I want to talk about, this is one of the reasons why I switched to basic fantasy from 5th edition. 5th edition, in my opinion, is a fine game in and of itself. When you look at the core rule books and the rules as written and how they function, the game works just fine. You can have fun with it. I've had lots of fun with it until I didn't. But it's totally possible to run a successful game with that game. It works. The game works. Part of my problem, and I think part of my frustration in running 5th edition, was that the stat blocks for creatures are like entire pages. And as we'll see here, looking at basic fantasy, this is a giant ant. This is literally everything you have here. And everything you need to run that creature as it is right there. Much simpler stat blocks. You only get the information you need. You'll notice, unlike 5th edition, that none of these creatures are statted out as far as physical attributes are concerned. Instead, again, everything is based on hit dice. This is why it's almost like the less is more, I think, and the simplicity of this sort of thing is just so much better, because you can use hit dice to track a lot of different things as to how difficult this creature is going to be, as well as how much reward, experience point wise, the players are going to get. But we'll get to that point in a minute here. First, we have to go over some key terms regarding monsters. So here on page 58 of the PDF, but it's actually 54 if you're in the physical book. Again, the numbers don't line up, and there's nothing I can do about that. So 58 in the let me write that down, because I'm going to be jumping around a little bit here, and I want to be able to come back to this. 58 in the PDF, 54 in the physical book. So we have name. That is obviously the name of the creature. Armor class. So the one thing, again, that's different with basic fantasy in comparison to, say, Swords and Wizardry or old school essentials, is that basic fantasy only gives you the ascending armor class, and they do it in a weird way where unarmored is 11. It's a little strange. I almost think that what happened here is that they're maybe using, I'm not sure, but I would assume that it's a weird system, because if the way you convert from like basic is that they're using to hit armor class 0 is 19. You need to roll a 19 on a d20 to just straight hit armor class 0. And in that was in most basic games. Like if you're using Thaco, For instance, the rules cyclopedia has this for most level 1 characters. Roll a 19, you hit armor class 0. Which means unarmored is 9. And so the way you would find out what the ascending armor class is for a character, like if you wanted to convert it to a more modern system, if you're using the rule cyclopedia, is you do 19 minus 9, which is 10. So unarmored is 10. And if you look, for instance, at Swords and Wizardry or Old School Essentials, that's essentially what they have going on there in their rule set. They give you often both the descending and the ascending armor class. This is where Basic Fantasy is a little weird in that it's one above 10. It's 11 for unarmored, which is a little strange to me. So I think that if you are going to use this, if you're going to use other source books, let's say you're going to use like an old school BX module or something like that, you can do that formula as I suggested. So 19 minus the descending armor class will give you your ascending armor class, and then add 1 to it. And that should be enough to fit within Basic Fantasy. That's what personally I would do. I mentioned before, I wasn't sure, I think it was in the character creation video or something like that, where I wasn't sure what was going on with armor, and I realized I think this is what it is that for some reason it's just 1 above. Unarmored is 11 when I personally think it should be 10, but that's just me. Conversely, at character creation, you could just say, and you could just house rule that unarmored is 10, and you would then have to I would then decrease the armor class of all of your other creatures in the game. So like all of these creatures here, if you're using a giant ant, instead of an armor class 17, say 16, this ape is going to be 13 instead of 14, 14 instead of 15 for this assassin vine. That's what I would do, personally, if I was going to do it. It seems like a lot of math, but for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure why, Chris Gonnerman, the author of this, decided to make unarmored 11, and it doesn't make much sense to me unless he's using 20 instead of 19, which would give you unarmored 9, which doesn't make a lot of sense because this is a clone of BX, and BX had unarmored at 9 with a to hit armor class of 19, if I remember correctly. I don't have my BX PDFs open right now. I should have opened them, but I didn't. But that's just me kind of thinking about it and trying to work this out in my head as to what is going on. And I think that's what's going on. But that's the armor class. Regardless, none of this of what I just said matters if you just plan on playing Basic Fantasy raw with only Basic Fantasy source material. If you're just going to run Basic Fantasy rules as written, or you're going to run this part rules as written, just use the ascending armor class as is. Quite honestly, your players are probably going to be more familiar with this aspect than anything else. Then we have hit dice. So this line here, right here, hit dice. Hit dice right here on the giant ant. Hit dice, this line gives the creature's number of hit dice and lists any bonus hit points. Monsters always roll 8-sided dice, D8, no matter what it is. If it's a dragon, if it's an orc, all creatures use D8s for their hit dice. Simple, easy. Unless otherwise noted. So, for example, creatures with 3+2 hit dice rolls 3d8 and adds 2 points to the total. Simple. 1 or 2 asterisks may appear after the hit dice figure where present. They indicate a special ability bonus to experience points awarded for the monsters. See the character advancement in the adventure section for more details. So, if we go to page 46 in the PDF, you can see here that this is a special ability bonus. So if there's 1 asterisk by it, let's say you're fighting a 3 hit dice creature, you're going to have 145 experience points earned for killing this creature or defeating it, plus an extra 30 for a little asterisk that's by its hit dice. So if it has 3, and this is for like generally like this is a 3 hit dice creature, but it has maybe a special ability that is above and beyond what most 3 hit dice creatures have, you're going to get an extra 30 on top of that. If there's 2, you're going to get 60. You're going to double it. So this chart is very handy if you're going to try and like homebrew some of your own creatures. Maybe you can kind of get a guess as to what how much experience points, like if you're going to make a monster and you're like, it's going to be a big guy with 6 hit dice, okay, that's worth 500, but maybe he has some kind of special ability. He's not just a wild beast, let's say. He has a breath weapon or some kind of special like let's say there's a sound attack or something that maybe forces enemies to perform a save or take damage or fall prone or be paralyzed, something that makes it a little extra deadly. Well, then you can adjust it with the special ability bonuses as well. So it's kind of handy for if you're trying to, in my opinion, homebrew some monsters. Next, you have you use hit dice for the attack bonus. For the attack bonus, again, if we go back to page 50 of the PDF or page 46 in your book, you have the number of hit dice. So we talked about this before in the combat section, but we'll cover it again here. Let's say you're fighting an orc. He has 2 hit dice. He's going to have a +2 attack bonus to all his attack rolls. So you as the game master, when you're rolling your dice for these creatures, you're going to roll your d20 and you're going to add 2 to that roll in order to get your hit roll. You're not just going to roll straight d20. So that's really important. Remember that. Otherwise, your monsters are not going to start. Eventually, they're not going to be getting hits as often as your players probably are going to be getting hits. Your monsters are going to die a little sooner. So this helps make it feel a little more deadly. And again, this is why I like using hit dice as a metric of difficulty rather than what 5th edition tries to do with challenge ratings, because I can look at a creature's hit dice and be like, okay, it's going to be worth X amount of hit points or X amount of XP. And if I use essentially a 4 hit dice creature, it's going to equal that attack bonus. And as you can see, it's really easy to remember this. You don't really even need to reference this at all if you look at it here for most of these creatures. So 1 to 7 is pretty much just 1 to 8 actually is pretty much just equal to the attack bonus is equal to that creature's hit dice. So you're fighting a 4 hit dice creature, it's going to have a +4 to its attack bonus. You're going to fight a 6 hit dice creature, +6. It only gets weird when you get to like 9, where it's still 8, and then 10 to 11 is 9, and so that's when you maybe have to start referencing this chart. The Basic Fantasy website has a really great Dungeon Master screen pages, and I have one of those Dungeon Master screens where like I can insert my own stuff on the inside. And so I just printed up those pages and I stick them in my Dungeon Master screen. So now I have this chart, I have all the classes, saving throws, all that stuff is in my Dungeon Master screen. It's very handy. So let's get back to looking at this here. Movement. This line gives the monster's movement rate, or rates for those monsters able to move in more than one fashion. So for instance, it talks about bugbears have a normal walking movement of 30, and this is all that is listed for them. Mermaids can only move about in the water, and their movement is given as swim 40. Pegasi can both walk and fly, so their movement is listed as 80 feet fly and 160 feet. Or sorry, 80 feet walking, flying 160 feet. So that's important to look at here. You'll see some creatures here. So like this one only has 5 for the vine. We'll try and find or here 8 and 10. That 10 is this in parentheses is that maneuverability score. I generally again don't use it for creatures, but only for vehicles and larger vehicles at that. Carriages, wagons, giant ships in the water, all that kind of stuff. So we got that. So yeah, so we got it here in parentheses. A distance may appear in parentheses after a movement figure. This is the creature's turning distance. If a turning distance is not listed, assume 5 feet. So then we got attacks. The number and sometimes type of attacks the monsters can perform. For example, goblins may attack once with a weapon, so they are marked with 1 weapon. Ghouls are marked with 2 claws, 1 bite, as they can attack with both claws and also bite in 1 round. Damage. The damage figures caused by successful attacks by the monster. Generally, this will be defined in terms of 1 or more die rolls. And number of appearing, this is very important, especially when you're doing like random encounters and stuff like that. This is a good thing to have. This is given in terms of 1 or more die rolls. Monsters that appear underground and have no lairs will have a single die roll. Those that have lairs and or those that can be found in the wilderness will be noted appropriately. For example, a monster noted as 1d6 and wild 2d6, lair 3d6 is encountered in groups of 1d6 individuals in a dungeon setting, 2d6 individuals in the wilderness, and 3d6 individuals in a lair. Note that number appearing applies to combatants. Non-combatant monsters, juveniles, sometimes females, do not count in this number. The text of the monster description should explain this in detail where it matters, but the GM is always the final arbiter. Save as. This is important as well, especially if you have spellcasters in your player character party. They might be casting spells that force monsters to perform their own saving throws, so you're going to want to use this to reference what that creature saves as. So a character class and level the monster uses for saving throws. Most monsters save as fighters of a level equal to their hit dice. So that's an easy thing to remember. So let's again look at this ant here. Most save as fighters, okay? Fighter 4, equal to their hit dice. So hit dice is 4, they're going to save as a 4th level fighter. Morale, this is important. This is a number that will be rolled equal to or less than on 2d6 for the monsters to pass a morale check. Monsters having a morale of 12 never fail morale checks and fight until destroyed or until they have no enemies left. So things with a 12 morale are things like zombies, constructs, magical constructs, things that don't necessarily have a mind, whereas goblins and animals, certain animals, will have a morale score. They will stop fighting and try and book it and leave if the fight starts to not go their way. Then we have treasure type. This line reflects how much wealth the creature owns. See the treasure section, which we'll cover later, for more details. In most cases, a creature keeps valuables in its home or lair and has no treasure when it travels. Intelligent creatures that own useful portable treasure, such as magic items, tend to carry and use these, leaving bulky items at home. And then we get the experience points, the number of experience points awarded for defeating this monster. In some cases, the figure will vary. For instance, dragons of different age categories will have different XP values. Review the experience point awards in awards table in the adventure section above to calculate the correct figure in these cases. So again, let's look at just the giant ant because it's right here. Has an armor class of 17, so that's what the characters have to. They do their attack rolls. I know many of you know it, but let's explain it anyways. That's the number they have to roll in the d20 and meet or beat in order to land a hit and deal damage. At least damage that matters. Obviously, combat is kind of abstracted, and within Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the idea is that, you know, combat is taking 6 seconds on your turn. And so that means, like, it could take a whole minute, for instance, for it to come back around to your turn. And in that time, there is thrusts and parries, and there's arrows being shot maybe, or things like that. And when a d20 is rolled and a hit is made, that just means that this is a hit that might mean something, that actually caused noticeable damage rather than, you know, surfacey hits that maybe cause just light bruising or things like that. So D&D's combat is, I think, actually more abstracted than a lot of people think it to be. But yeah. Hit dice 4, so we're going to roll 4d8 for this, and we're going to total it. And you notice that you don't get an average here. You're expected to roll, and this is what I like about old school. And one thing my players had discovered, so I think my players were fighting some zombies in the sewers recently, and I roll for the hit dice for each creature individually. Actually, they were fighting zombies in the sewer for a Subscribe Star adventure that I had done for my Subscribe Star supporters from my channel, called The Secret Summoning. And they were fighting some zombies, and it was funny because they rolled their attacks to hit, and, you know, I think one zombie had like 4 hit points, and they took that zombie down, and so they're like, oh, that was like 4 damage. So at most, these creatures have like 4 health, 4 hit points. And, you know, they're getting in their metagame thing. And this is why rolling individual hit dice for creatures is oftentimes funny to me and my favorite way to do it. Because they go and try and hit the next one, and they dealt like 6 damage, and it didn't take the zombie down. And they're like, what the heck? Like, how is this zombie still not down? The other one was 4. And then they realized, oh, John is varying their hit points. So it kind of takes out the metagaming aspect of some of that, I think, which to me is funny. Next, we have damage. So this is the amount of damage that this creature can deal with its one bite. Movement. So we have 60 feet of walking because it's just an ant. It's going to just be moving across the ground. This is its turning movement, how much it eats up as it turns. Number of appearing. So here we go. This is a perfect animal for this. So 2d6 in a dungeon. If you're in the wild, you're going to also find 2d6. And if you're in their lair, you're going to find 4d6. So you're going to roll. And this is why I like old school, is that it really lends itself to kind of emergent play, sandbox stuff. I don't have to plan anything. I just roll on a random encounter table. Oh, you encounter some ants. How many? Oh, we're in the wild. So they're traveling through the wilderness. They're in a forest. You're in the wild, so you encounter 2d6. I rolled 2d6. Oh, 4 appeared out of the 2d6 rolled. I rolled a 2 and a 2 on both dice. So now you encountered 4 ants. Then I roll for their hit dice. And away we go. The encounter's on its way. Easy. I like that aspect. Then we have here what it saves as a 4th level fighter again. And then we have a varying morale here. So 7 on first sighting. So what I would take away from this is that Game Master should roll for if the creature is going to just run away from the start. If they are going to sit and defend their lair or themselves, they're going to fight to the death. Treasure. This is how much treasure they have, U or special. And experience points, how much experience points it is worth. And let's double check this. So 240, and let's go to page 46 in the PDF. It's 4 hit dice creature, 240. There you go. So, and if it had a special ability bonus, it'd be 280. Let's say if you were to add it onto that there. So, easy peasy. Let's scroll back down here. To the giant ant, and then you get a little description about what this animal is. Giant ants are among the hardiest and most adaptable vermin. Soldiers and workers are about 5 to 6 feet long, so they're pretty big. While queens can grow to a length of 9 feet. Giant ants may be red or black. There is no statistical difference between them. Though relatively shy when first encountered, once combat begins, they will fight to the death. They are known to collect shiny things, and so will sometimes have a small amount of treasure in their lair. So if you're able to beat the ants, find their lair, you're going to find on the treasure chart U, and then that's a percentile thing where you're going to be rolling you have to roll under a certain percentage to see if there's a certain amount of copper, silver, gold, electrum, platinum, jewels, gems, and jewelry, and maybe some magic items. So you're going to be doing that as well on table U, which is, we'll get to that eventually. Giant ants may occasionally mine shiny metals such as gold or silver. 1 in 3, 1 to 2 on a d6 ant lairs will contain 1d100 by times 1d100 GP value in relatively pure nuggets of some kind of precious metal of some kind. So you get a little blurb there. This is all you need, seriously. And you can see some of these, like the carnivorous ape is like even smaller as far as what its stat blocks are, which is great. And I mean, you compare this to like a 5e one where there's some creatures where like it's this whole page. It's like here's its physical attributes, and then there's this long description of the creature itself, and then even further longer descriptions of each creature's special abilities. And to me, as a game master, that's just too much to keep track of sometimes, which is annoying. I much prefer this kind of thing to most others. You got a basilisk here. Let's look at this one here. So this guy's got 2 special ability bonus. He has 6, 10. So let's look at 46. That's what I want. 6 hit dice, and he had 2 special ability bonuses. So 55, 100, and 610. Is that? Let's see if that adds up. Let's do some some math here. $610. There you go. So some of these creatures, it's obviously already included. The special ability bonus is already included in the XP total there, which is good to know. Again, you have a treasure type F, morale, what it saves as, which is again equal to its hit dice, number of attacks. It has 1 bite, 1 gaze, its speed, turning radius, a number of appearing. Again, this is a great here. You get 1d6 in a dungeon, 1d6 in the wild, and 1d6 in a lair. So not much difference between when it's encountered. And then sometimes you get a little bit of cool art in here in regards to these creatures as well. So you can see, I mean, for me, this is partly why I really loved and made the switch to basic fantasy, because these stat blocks are so easy. I wish I had my 5e book. My monster manual fell apart, and it's currently in a cabinet behind me. All the pages. I wish I could compare it with the two. In fact, let's look at this here. Let's look at the stat block for a basilisk here. It's actually not that bad on D&D Beyond here. Pretty similar. Not that surprising. I'm wrong. But still, it's a good thing here to see like how different a lot of this is. Let's look at the hit dice here. You can see how overly inflated compared to 5e. So you just get 6 hit dice here. Over here, you got 8d8 plus 16. This thing is just a damage sponge, and I think that's partly why it bothers me. AC 15, AC 16 here, so roughly comparable in that regard. How much experience points? 700 and 610. So roughly comparable still. That's just really fascinating. But yeah, you don't get any of this stuff here in basic fantasy. You don't need this. It's kind of unnecessary, and I think the reason why these stat blocks are here like this in these newer editions is because of the way they've done saving throws based on these ability scores, which I get some people like. For me personally, I personally like the old school saving throws. So this just tells you everything you need to know rather than having to have every stat out an ability score for every ability within each creature, which would just be annoying. You can just be like, oh, it has 6 hit dice, it's going to save as a 6th level fighter. Just simple, easy. I love it. Let's close Beyond here. But yeah, I mean, you can go through here. Again, this PDF is free for the core rulebook, and anything else, the PDFs are free for basic fantasy. And you can see that some of these guys have a additional XP bonus there, or right here. It's all relatively simple, and for me, while I'm trying to keep track of during combat and amount of hit points that are left on a creature and spell effects that are going on, having simple stat blocks for me to keep track of is just, it makes the game way more engaging for me as a dungeon master, because I'm able to focus on the adventure at hand for the players rather than worrying about a million different things that I'm trying to keep track of all at once, which I just feel like sometimes 5e is both simple and yet like just information vomit at the same time, going on all at once with feats that characters can do and they're going on about, and effects of spells, and what your creatures can do and can't do. This is just simple, and I don't feel like, as far as the play goes, as far as how play has gone in comparison to my 5e games, I don't feel like it's any less engaging despite how much more simple this is. So I think that's going to do it for this video, guys. This is how monsters work. It's really simple. You got a bugbear here. I like that old school classic art style art there. That's great. And yeah, it's simple. Everything follows the same format, and simple stat blocks. It's quick and easy to do this. And monsters make up a big chunk of the book here. And once you get past monsters, we get to so see, this is what you get for free with the PDF. You're getting tons of monsters, everything you need, and then there's two more free PDFs of monsters out there on the Basic Fantasy website that you can look at. So you are not going to want for monsters. You are going to have plenty and plenty of monsters for your role-playing experience here. Let's get to we're almost at the end. Here we go, zombies. So treasure will be the next thing we talk about. But I hope that my video series on this has been enlightening to anyone out there, maybe interested in abandoning or checking out something other than 5e. I think, again, there's nothing wrong with 5e, but my point is with these videos is, look, this is free. The PDFs are free and the books are printed at cost. I'm going to keep reiterating this because even if you want to run 5e still, there are things in these old school style of play that you can use to kind of give your 5e game some OSR sensibilities even, such as reaction rolls, all these other sorts of things, just ideas that you could take from this. Hirelings, using hirelings is something that's not really in domain play, is something that's not really talked about in 5e, and it is talked about more, not as in depth in Basic Fantasy, but just in general in OSR games. It's a big part of it. So we're going to talk about treasure in the next video, and I mean, after treasure there's not much left. There's treasure and magic items, and then it's just a few things regarding domain play, dungeon encounters, random monster encounter tables, how to use those. This will probably all be one video because I think we'll be getting at least one or two more videos, so we'll be getting to the end at that point. But yeah, next video will be treasures. Make sure you check out my subscribe star if you're interested. If you support at the expert tier or above, you get an adventure a month, and even above that, if I release something that's bigger than just an adventure, you're going to get it for free. I'm trying to post lots of stuff on there, keep you guys updated on what I'm doing. For instance, sharing the document for my Aztec game in there, which some people have been giving me feedback on, which is great. That's all there on my subscribe star. You support my channel, and when you do that, and I'm super grateful to the people that have already done it. You see their names, kind of a few of them that are supporting the channel. Their names scroll up at the end of the videos now. Your name could be there too. Check out tonight. I will be streaming, hopefully, if all goes well, at 8:15 Mountain Standard Time, as usual, every Monday night. And until the next video, guys, talk to you later. Peace out.